Hi, everybody. Welcome back or welcome to Facebook Live. I'm Susan Barnett, curator of Yellowstone Art Museum, and I'm here with Jill Ahlberg Yohe, who's a wonderful curator, and she juried the exhibition and did a fantastic job. We're really excited to have her with us today.
When I came to MIA, I I was a co-curator along with Terry Greaves, a wonderful curator and scholar, Parts of Our People, Native Women Artists, and it was the first show ever dedicated to Native women art. So I've been pretty much focused on that. But this has been, thank you so much for this opportunity, and it has been a real joy for me to participate in viewing and thinking about all of this wonderful work.
Thank you so much for agreeing to jury this exhibition. I reached out to you thinking that this exhibition, the title of it is Women's Work. And I wanted to think about women's work in a broad way, thinking about traditional craft and thinking about just the most conceptual contemporary art, and thinking about how women's experience as creators and as workers informs that art. And I think you were probably my first choice as a juror, because I feel like I really respect that exhibition that you curated at MIA recently, and I feel like that exhibition has that kind of very broad view of women's work over time. And I wondered if that was something that informed your process as a juror.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it was astonishing to me to see the variety of mediums and the quality of work that was submitted. It was really hard to do, and I gotta say, there was only a select number that we could include, but there were so many that I wanted to include as well. But you have to. That was like Hearts of Our People. We had to bring it down to 119 objects to tell the whole story of Native women artists. So that's to say, it's a really hard task to do. But I absolutely agree. I think one of the incredible things that I encountered with all of the artwork that was submitted was just this wonderful thread that I saw in the work, whether it was deeply conceptual or if it was based on what art historians they categorized as craft. I saw a through line through there of women's work and the power of women and the resiliency of women and the artistry of women. And it was just something that it was really incredible to see and celebrate the ingenuity of Native women artists across time and place. So it's really challenging to kind of work with what you have and recognize, it's hard to let some things go, and it was really hard in this jurying process. But the other thing that we were talking about is one thing that I'm really excited about to see, whether in person or if we can get a gallery view, is what I was imagining in my mind was how these works look and how they speak to each other, how they resonate with each other, how they have similarities and differences, and that through line. So when I continued and I kept on looking at the final list, and then we would see, you shared the final list with me recently, and I said to myself, it's just such a beautiful exhibition. I mean, it's just such a beautiful exhibition, and it really illustrates really illuminates the power of women's work, and the multitude and the perspective and the multiplicities and the vibrancy and all of the different mediums. Is
absolutely. Something that really struck me is we had asked the artists for their canned artist statement, and a lot of those were good, actually. But we also asked them, how does this work fit the theme of the exhibition? And I assume that you read that as you were jurying, because their responses are so strong. And I at first thought that, okay, I'm going to do extended labels for maybe 30% of the works. And as long as I keep it to that, the people that aren't included won't be offended, and I'm just going to use the best. I couldn't. I ended up having to do an extended label for every single work because every artist had something that was really profound to say about either their work or what it was about, or their process, or something, their immigrant experience, the experience that their ancestors had gone through, that what these materials meant in terms of this chain of women over time. So many interesting stories.
Yes, yeah, I absolutely agree. I was mesmerized by reading, and it's not often the case with artist work that you're you're mesmerized by their artistic work, but not necessarily by their written work. But I got to say that what was shared was something that was heartfelt, and it was something that was very authentic, and that's often missing in art speak. I feel, I don't know if you felt the same way. I felt it was so refreshing to hear, and it was, and again, it was so powerful because it was so refreshing and it was so authentic. I'm really thrilled that you included those words with the works of art, because I think that they were, in many ways, they were critical to some of the decisions that I made, because of understanding the layers of meaning, the layers of history, the layers of experiences, the layers of trauma, the layers of pain, the layers of joy, all of the layers, and that, it's more of an insight. So I think that that's really great for your visitors to experience that and see that.
It's been so interesting chatting with you. I think we should just talk, let's go back a little bit and talk about, tell me about your process of judging the show. I think we had about 441 entries, and you chose 60. And what were some of the things that you were thinking about as you were judging the show?
Well, one of the things that I think that, as you pointed out before, I have just kind of been a part of curating a large exhibition. And given the title, I wanted to also, I thought it was a really, really good, I thank you for the opportunity, because it was allowing me to continue to think about things that I have been thinking about, things about the idea of the divide, the divide of art and craft that is a construction. Thinking about the idea of women's labor being unrecognized. Thinking about the quality of technique. Thinking about medium. Thinking about concepts. Thinking about a whole host of things. And so I was just, as I said before, I was just mesmerized with the variety of material. And also, I gotta say, both the variety of material, and also it was very joyful to see the place specific. I've sensed a Montana ethos. I sensed a Montana feel when I was looking at a lot of these works, and correct me if I'm wrong, some of them were not from Montanans, but there were clear, were they all?
No, in fact, I counted, and I was amazed that we do have 13 artists from Montana. So Montana is very well represented, but there are a total of 60 artists in the exhibition, and we're representing 27 states.
Okay.
And the geographical range, it goes from Hawaii to Alaska, California, Florida, all over the country.
There were some that I did feel that it was important to recognize and maybe they were definitely from the West. It was definitely art that the artists were even articulating that their experience in living in the West. And I thought that was really important to recognize, because what I've learned from Indigenous people is to respect place. the importance of place. And I think that a lot of the artists created works of art in response to place, in response to memory, and in response to their own history of that particular place. And then there was like these wild conceptual works that were just you could see them in a gallery in New York too, which was just thrilling as well, and include that. So, so yeah, it gave me, it was overwhelming at first to think of 400 entries, but it was really, really exciting to do. And it really showed me the breadth and the scope of what women are doing and the important messages that need to be told through these works. A lot of important messages need to be told, and that are often left out of the canon, you know. And I think that art museums are finally, slowly but surely, coming to an awareness of their own previous limitations of including women's work, including the notion of women's work, of women's labor, of women's approach, of women's perspectives, of women's particular kind of art forms that are associated with women. So
yeah, a lot of times the categories themselves are devaluing, aren't they? I mean, the word craft, for instance, it's, you know, that even if you respect craft, then it tends to get conflated with hobby, right?
yes.
And then you see these incredible constructions that women have made over the years. I've bought numerous houses that had some drawer that was neglected that's full of handwork of one sort or another, right? From the crocheted doilies to just, you know, beautiful cut work and things like that. And they're in pristine condition because they were too valuable to use, and yet they had no value in the end, and they end up at a thrift store. It's fairly sad, but I think a lot of that is those arbitrary categories and valuations that are made on work that's outside of, you know, manly occupations like sculpture or oil
Right.
painting, historic oil painting at that.
Yes.
Not
Right.
genre painting, not painting that's about women or children or places, but
Right.
about the historical narratives.
Right. Right. And to see the technique, I mean, that was really important to me too. I don't know if this is a repeat, but what technical excellence was really important to me in terms of whether it was through brush strokes, if it was through technique in terms of textile production, in terms of clay vessels, in terms of sculpture itself. One of the things that was really important to us as a collective for Hearts of Our People was to show these magnificent works of art that stood on their own in terms of their technical excellence, and then just, you know, flew above that by telling all of these different stories of the history of Indigenous people. And I think likewise, the technical excellence that I saw in the examples that are in the exhibition is something to really credit the artists. And again, that idea of craft or the notion of technique and process is devalued, and it just doesn't make sense. It never made sense to me, but it is something that, you know, you have to kind of unravel every single day.
Right. Yeah, and the variety of media that are in the exhibition, it really it makes it so interesting, so rich.
Yes.
There's machine embroidery, and I thought that was really interesting. And there's intentionally crude hand embroidery because it's embroidered on a dish towel, and it's telling a story of abuse and survival.
Oh, that was stunning.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
work was stunning. Yeah.
And just incredibly powerful works. And there is a thread actually that goes through the exhibition that does talk about women's experience with abuse,
Yes.
but it generally also how they've overcome it. And often it's through the art that they are overcoming it.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it was like, I felt like I was a witness to truth telling. I really did. I feel like I was a witness to truth telling, both in the artistic medium, you know, of sharing all these vast sculpture and textiles and paintings and works on paper and all the different mediums and all of that truth telling, which is not seen in a lot of museums and not seen in a lot of exhibitions. That truth telling, that art is expands beyond what is accepted in the mainstream art world, of that truth telling, and these women showing that truth telling, but also to what you point out, I mean, these very intimate stories and truth telling of women's experience, whether they worked and out and worked as cattle wrestlers, or if they were abused, women of abuse, or if they were contemplating the women's labor,
There's another
motherhood.
thing I have to mention is there was a painting that a woman did of her grandmother. It was a photograph that was taken when she was in a work camp. She was in what became Czechoslovakia, and so first her little village was overtaken by the Nazis and then by Tito's communists, and you know, it was kind of the same for the villagers either way, and she ended up in a work camp, and you know, and then she's surrounded by these beautiful traditional motifs that would have come from her culture, and it's just such a lovely story of survivance.
It is. It really is. It was, yeah, that was a stunning work. That was immediately something that just drew me in. Just the beauty of the color, the texture she used, and the power of that woman, her grandmother, right? It was her grandmother. That her seated in the center with all of this cultural reference radiating around her, and within her dress, and her staring straight at the viewer was so
In
powerful.
a very triangular composition, you know, there's a very stability and strength there that's just amazing. Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Amanda, it looks like Amanda's going to be able to join us in a little while, I hope.
Great.
There's a process coming, so we might be able to make it up to the exhibition after all.
I also think I just love the like, again, the truth, that the vulnerability and the authenticity that was shared in this exhibition by the artists, that it seemed so extraordinary to me, of things like trauma and the complexities of motherhood and the complexities of childhood, and all of that. You don't see that much. You just don't. And then when it comes to
by those links that go back generationally from woman to woman, I just haven't seen that in art much. And if some of the women are using materials that literally came from their grandmothers, or there were materials that made them think back, like there's a wool bin, and it brought back memories of her childhood with sheep shearing, and also she was also thinking about, I don't know, it touches so many things. She was thinking the dark colored wool isn't as valuable as the light colored wool, and often it would just be composted. And so she thought about, again, thinking about this value of material, and she created a sculpture that's modeled on a compost bin for
that. Yeah, that was so beautiful. It was like both so grainy and gritty, and then just these flowers like emanated with the wool. She created this beautiful, like, sensuous wool piece. It was the contrast there were extraordinary.
Absolutely. And then, you know, again, some of the stories, I've interviewed a lot of the artists, and so I guess I know now even more than what they put into their statement. But one thing that struck me is one of the artists, in order to interview her, I had to plan it for when her son was napping. And then she also talked about the work that she made. It's a quilt. It's called House Home #2. And she's used indigo dyes and pieced them together. And so it kind of reflects I don't know, art history, minimalist kinds of
Yes.
composition, but then it's also reflecting on that long quilting tradition of women's work. And she said she made it with her son, her young infant son, strapped onto her back.
Yeah, I love that work too. I really love that work, and I love that the composition wasn't uniform. And on the very right hand corner, or maybe it's the left hand corner, there were little squares that had kind of not yet fully been put together.
Uh-huh.
I thought that that was really beautiful. Yeah, the textiles in the exhibition were just beautiful. All the range of textiles and the creativity that these women use textiles was incredible. And textiles is undervalued. It's it's undervalued in the art world.
And I learned something new in this exhibition. I did not know what a merkin was. And
Yes.
the merkins are pretty well represented. You chose two works. Actually, there was one, it was the only artist on the show that has more than one work, but it's the same, it's a different manifestation, I guess, of the same work. Do you want to talk about why you decided to choose both of those?
Right. Well, there were some artists where there was two selections that was hard. I wanted to include both works, but then I wanted to be generous to other artists as well. I thought it was important for the viewer to understand, because it was a conceptual work, an installation piece, but also its materiality itself. So I thought it was really, really important to, it's entitled Bringing Back the, is it called Bringing Back the Birkin again?
Oh, it's Make American Great Again.
Yes, yes.
And then, yes. So,
Yeah, so
we chose to install that. It's been installed many different ways in many different exhibitions. And the photo that she submitted showed it wrapped around a pole outdoors.
yes.
We chose to install it like political bunting, which I think is appropriate because she is very much reacting to the political climate and to the upcoming election year and wanting to jump in and satirize that. So American, I learned,
Yes.
they were invented in the 1400s. Sex workers had to shave because of lice, and it was a wig. Basically a wig for your privates. So
Yes.
And I love that the materials I think are really important in a lot
Exactly. That's because I understood, I could see where the artist was going with the political statement, and that again is something that maybe we haven't addressed in our discussions. I think that there were so many really strong political works of art, whether they were overtly political or if they were subtly political just by their sheer existence. They, are political just because they're made by women. In essence, they're political, right?
Right.
But I thought
one
that
thing I want to emphasize is that this show was not open just to women. It was open to all genders.
Right. That's true.
And we did receive, there are actually 3 men who are represented in the show. They all happen to be photographers, as it turns out. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out. But you were talking more about the political nature of a lot of the work.
Right. And I think that was another important component. I think the process, the aesthetic, the technical process. Oh, look at all these beautiful works. The technical excellence, I think the range of materials, I think that the stories embedded, I think the political nature of these topics, I think that the gendered stories, the gendered aspects of the characters or of the subject matter or of the materiality itself was really important to acknowledge and to honor. That I wanted to honor all of that as best I could with the selections.
Look at this. Hey, Amanda, we can see you.
Hello.
Well, hello. So now we're also live in the gallery. Thank you so much, Amanda, for being here. I'm glad solve the technical difficulties. Do you want to just do a little bit of a tour around the gallery, and Jill and I can jump in and ask questions? And
Yeah, absolutely.
are there some artists that you want to talk to?
Well, I think Wendy Foster just showed up. There she is.
Wonderful. Hi, Wendy.
Hi. That's Susan.
Hi, Susan. So
And
lovely
we
to
also
meet you
have
this
Jill
way.
Ahlberg Yohe with us. Our juror is here today too. Wendy, do you want to stand with your work?
Sure, I haven't found it quite yet, but I will.
Let's go find it.
Well, while we've set them off on a chase, see, Jilly, you can see how we chose to install the merkins.
Yes, it's beautiful. Oh, and look at the scale. Oh, I just love it. And I love, that was the other thing I loved. I love the intimacy of some of the works. Oh, sorry to interrupt. I love the intimacy of some of the works, and I love this large scale, the monumental was beautiful.
Yeah, you did a great job with selecting from very really intimate, tiny works to
Yes.
wall-sized works.
Yeah.
Oh, Wendy, that's such a wonderful painting. And do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Sure, this is part, this particular, I work in series, so I'll create a body of work anywhere from 15 to 30 pieces that are part of a series. This is part of my Unspoken series. My mask is falling.
Amanda, can you get a little bit closer so we can hear better?
Yes. This is from my Unspoken series, and this it's called Humility Begins to Unravel. This whole series is about things that may not be, they're more on the emotional level of things that aren't necessarily said out loud, but felt. And I thought this was appropriate for this show because I believe that women still do much of the heavy lifting as far as the emotional work and speaking goes. So that's the piece. They're created with multiple layers on a, these are custom panels just so I can get this particular size. But this started black, and then I got white, and then I dug into the paint and poured more over it and added more and dribbled and dabbled and
It's incredibly rich, the layers of it and the textures of it. It's really a gorgeous work. It's a really different format that you've chosen to be so long and narrow. What made you, what inspired you to work that way?
I started out, I work either square, I work this long format. This is kind of a new size. So I had some that are, the bulk of them are like 42. And then they're 20, 24, 30, 42, so they're all divisible by, they work into a Swiss grid, if that makes any sense, so that everything will square up eventually if we put them together in the right order, maybe.
So you tend to think of your work in terms of installation, in terms of multiples then?
Yeah, or I like that option. I work a lot in like triptych and multiple, there's one polydic that's like 9 panels or something. That didn't start out to be 9 panels, it just ended up that way. But I wanted to kind of push the envelope a little and try the longer format, which I did. And then it's always funny because it's a whole new exercise in composition, and it takes me about 4 or 5 tries to kind of knock that out to figure out where that lands. And then I saw somebody else who had these that were wider. So now I have some 18 by 8, so this is 9, so they're 18 by 60. So look out, I don't know what will happen.
Ooh.
Well, thanks so much for showing us, Wendy.
Absolutely.
Amanda, can we just, oh, that's wonderful to get to
Yes.
see the detail of that.
Yes. That vertical composition just was so extraordinary to see. It was so beautiful in the lines. And she's, and I'm sorry, her name again, the artist's name?
Wendy Foster.
Wendy. Wendy spoke to something I think that I also saw it as a theme in the exhibition, and that is what is spoken and what is unspoken, what is expected, what is unexpected, what is kept silent, what remains silent, and what is voiced. Those seemed really, they just permeated a lot of these artistic works, and I think that that is so important. Those kinds of discussions are so important, but I think within the work itself, it speaks to that subtlety, and that the vertical composition allows for that, as well as the line. So it was just, that was really beautiful work.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Wendy, it is gorgeous. While we're here, Amanda, can we look at the work that's right next to that? I was
Yeah. Oh, right
Yeah,
there.
right
Yeah.
there, yes. I was thinking about this work as we were talking about some of the threads that wind through this exhibition.
Yes.
And this is one, let's see, by Wai Ting Wei. It's called Armor. And so she's talking very explicitly, although very abstractly, about the changes that take place from girlhood to womanhood, and both the strength that you take on, you becoming a mother, but also the increased vulnerability. And so she created this incredibly fragile and beautiful piece that's about this emotional state of transitioning to motherhood.
Yeah, the delicacy and the yeah, oh, that's just extraordinary. It's so great to see them in kind of more in person now.
Yeah, at
Oh,
least we can really zoom in.
yes. And the color, the palette, I gotta say that white is just so delicious and so impactful. I mean, you're thinking of white, you don't necessarily think of it having a lot of, it just conveys, I feel like the hue and the tone of that white said so much without explicitly saying a lot, if that makes sense. Just that white, that tone.
And then you expect it to be really soft, but it's made from polymer clay. I'd say this was probably the most frightening piece that we installed. It's so fragile, so incredibly fragile. We have a lot of small works hung in the hallway. It's a space that, you know, is more narrow, and these are all works that you don't really have to get way back from. But there's just some really exquisite small works along here.
Oh, that hand, I gotta say.
Isn't that exquisite?
Oh, that hand, it's exquisite. I gotta say, you know, I'm not an artist, but I have heard from my artist friends that hands are the hardest things to ever depict. That the
Let's
hand
see the hand.
is so hard, and that hand is just, I continue to think, when I saw it the other day when I was looking at, look at that hand. Oh my God.
That is a working woman's hand, and she's holding a needle and thread,
Yes,
but she looks like she could just as well be holding iron.
yes, yes.
We almost called you to see if we could jury more of her work in, because I love her work in series. She has a beautiful series of these strong women.
Both of those, you know, it took me hours to looking at both of her hands. That was really challenging for me, but I wanted to, other than the Merkin.
Oh, let's pause here on this one.
Wow. Yes.
You can't just, yeah. So yeah, this one, I mean, without knowing the story, just looking at the image, it's so mysterious and frightening.
Yes.
And then to hear her story, it's a photograph, And I think it's a self-portrait with underneath dryer lint sheets.
Yes.
And I think just thinking about her life as an artist and how the domestic realm encroaches on her creative life, her intellectual life.
Right. I mean, again, like that just, it crushed me. It crushed me. And art is to crush, right? I mean, the emotions in these works. I mean, when I saw that as a woman, it just crushed me. And I just think that so many people, it could resonate with so many people. And the brilliance of her using fabric dryer sheets to create such, like you said, such a mysterious kind of veil that is made in the kind of domestic materials that just cloud her vision, that suffocate her in a way, or that filter the way that she sees the world.
And the way she's seen as well.
The way she's seen, yes.
Let's continue down the wall, please. Okay, this is not a doily in a frame. This is a drawing, people.
I couldn't even imagine that this wasn't a doily, and I had to go back over and over and over again to see that this is a work on paper. I thought that my mind was playing tricks on me, because it was so beautifully done. And again, she had a selection of equally beautiful works, but the exactness and the rendering of that was so beautiful. And then to put, like you had discussed before, that which is precious, women's work, those doilies, that hard handcrafted work, and then to put it on a work of on paper is just, it was brilliant.
Well, exactly. She's taken this devalued object that you can find in any thrift shop for 50 cents, which a woman just poured lots of labor into, and then she's labored to create this absolutely gorgeous drawing out of it.
Yes.
It's wonderful. Well, let's see what else is on this wall. Oh, yeah, this is a wonderful. I was surprised at how small it is. I mean, I know the dimensions are on the photos, but you just don't register. This work is only about 4 inches square. And so it has a really preciousness about it.
Yes, yeah.
And so this artist is featuring some of the new crop of women representatives in Congress.
Yes.
And again, women's work, it's a wonderful representation of another aspect of women's work.
Yes. And I love how she takes the hair and she pulls the hair outside of the frame and puts it onto the white surface that extends beyond. It's just like, it's such a statement. And the dimensionality of that work.
She's really breaking through her frame, isn't she?
Yes, exactly.
Hey, let's head on down. This is another Montana artist, Courtney Glazon, and she just recently had a show at the University Gallery, MSUB, here in Billings. And yeah, this work, so many layers to this in every meaning of the word, right?
Yeah. Yeah, she also was an artist, you know, who there was several works of hers that are equally, you know, that was really, really hard to decide. I knew from the very beginning she was going to be, you know, juried into the exhibition, but then I just toiled and, you know, thought about which one. And I just think this one that's referring to Sylvia Plath and her relationship with her husband and yes, and creating these like mythical figures that are in the imagination of like a childhood's imagination, that are dreamlike, that follow these sequences that make sense but don't make sense at the same time, are surrealistic. But yeah, it was
And that it's hard, even going in close right now on this Facebook Live, it's really hard to see. She's used vintage wallpapers in her layering, and I think it's under Mylar, so they're just layers and layers and layers and reveal and conceal. And she talked a little bit about Sylvia Plath and how, how her biography, well, in her life, her husband overshadowed her because he was also a famous poet. And then in death, it was so much her biography that overshadowed her work. And yeah, Courtney is really wanting to drill into all of those complexities as well as some of the meanings of her work.
Yeah.
Hey, Susan, we've got Eileen Denny who would love to talk about her work.
I would love to have her talk about her work. Hi, Eileen. I love the way your colors match your painting this evening. That's lovely.
Thank you. It's actually extremely unintentional, but there's a lot of colors already in it, so I had a good chance of matching it.
So this is a work, Eileen, that we were actually talking about earlier. It was one that just left such a vivid impression on me and on Jill that we were having a conversation about it without being able to see it. And I wonder, do you want to just tell a little bit of the story of what this work is about?
So this work is, well, it plays a lot into what's going on in today, just generally as far as, immigration and, what's going on with America. But I'll wind back into, the actual story of this woman who is actually my great-great-grandmother, named immigrant Tillinger. That's the German pronunciation. Anyway, in the end of World War II, she was actually an ethnic German or Danube Swabian living in the Barnett region of what was then Yugoslavia. By the end of the war, this got kind of complicated because she, as an ethnic German, there's a lot of other ethnic groups too living in that area, was viewed negatively by the communist regime under Tito at that time. So she and a lot of other Danube Swabians were either forcibly removed from their homes or fled. There's about 500,000 or so people living in that area that were Danube Swabian. She and her husband, unfortunately, were sent to separate not concentration camps, work camps in 1944. And that was the last time she actually saw her husband, Peter. And she managed to survive. She was actually sent to 2 separate camps. I have the information on my phone, actually. But she managed to live through these camps. I was actually an old woman. She was in her late 60s, early 70s. And, I mean, kind of incredible hardship dealing with that as far as the work camps. Many of the people died of malnourishment. It's estimated about a low number, about 50,000 people were unfortunately victims of that time. She managed to escape in about 1951. That's actually when a lot of the camps were closed down. So about 5 years after the war ended, and she managed to meet up with her sons in Andorf, Austria, about 1951.
Her strength comes through in the composition, and then what have you done with the background? Tell us a little bit about the patterning around her.
So the background is actually a kind of a folk art tradition of this Eastern European area, and also I decided to add my own narrative element into the background as well, just to kind of depict her transition through from being, living with her.
Zoom in a little bit more there, Nick, please.
Wow.
Let's show the people that are in the flower to the left of her head. Yes.
Yeah, and that is actually kind of demonstrating her and her husband, Peter, caught in between both the German soldiers on the right, German soldiers on the left,
getting my hands confused here. And then the Serbian communists on the right, and they're kind of caught in between this turmoil, having both, you know, people. I mean, you're kind of stuck between. You're not quite really German at that time, and you're not considered, you know, Yugoslavian or Serbian. You're something else. You're not part of any nation.
Mhm.
And then it transitions to her just in torment, you know, living through the work camp. And then at the end shows her, at least at this flower, shows her actually on her way to meet back with her family. And that she's at the end, she's alone, she's without her husband, who has been a victim. He's actually portrayed in one of the flowers with the hat as well, as kind of a little Easter egg. But yeah, and the actual photo of her, or the main portrait of her, is actually kind of a before portrait. So, and then the background is the future that has unfolded for this person. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's a bit deep.
Yeah, that's such a powerful work. I'm really glad that it's in the show. It's funny because this wall, with, I guess with the exception of the small landscape that's to the right, if you scan over to the left a little bit, all of the works on this wall have to do with immigrant experience. So this is another one of our local artists, Candace Ferret, and she's, you know, kind of thinking about the current situation with our southern border and the effect on women and children particularly. And then keep scanning to the left for a minute. Yeah, this artist is a first generation immigrant and kind of in a personal space that's neither here nor there. I think there's a lot of immigrant experience in this show. There's another artist who's really concentrating subject matter of liminality, of that in-between space. And I think this is another one where the artist is really dealing with that idea.
Absolutely. This was my daughter's favorite. This is my daughter's favorite work in the show.
Yeah, it's so dark and playful at the same time, like a Grimm's fairy tale.
It is. It is. And the figure is so strong. And the colors, her tone, her colors, her eyes, her hair.
The eyes are from another century in a way, aren't
yes.
they?
Yes, that's beautiful.
And then going one more to the left, just take a look at Made in China by Sun Nguyen.
Yes. Yeah, that was again a no-brainer. That the presence, the way that the artist was able to capture so much in this woman. Look at her headpiece. Wow. Look at that in person, or quote unquote in person. That's incredible.
And the surface, a lot of the background is gold leaf, so it's got that incredible richness.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, I don't remember her full story, you know, right off the top of my head, but I think she was in Vietnam during the war. I think she lost her family as a young child. She ended up immigrating to the US, and now she's living in Hawaii and has a family of her own, and is, you know, finding a stability for the first time in her life. This incredibly strong. And I think it is a self-portrait. This strength is her reflection of herself and all of her cultural influences, and just this incredible strength.
It's unbelievable.
And here's a couple of works that we just passed one. Can we zoom in really quickly, the one on the right?
That artist was unbelievable to She also had several works that, but this work and the content of this work, and that this was a textile. This is a textile, which astounded me. And her attention to the detail of everything in that kitchen was incredible. And and the colors that she was able to, do you have that? It's all textile based, is that correct?
I think my memory is that it was based on a digital photo, and then she printed it onto fabric, and then she went back in with thread and beading to bring
Yes.
things out more. And it's amazing. It's another small piece with just incredible detail. And
Right.
here it is, this just completely ordinary scene of women's work, that
Exactly.
kind of invisible labor.
Exactly. Just beautiful though. I mean, the beauty of that women's work. I mean, she was able to render something that is so mundane, so beautifully, and to show the importance of that work, to catapult it into the importance of what it is. And she was able to do that through her art.
It's incredibly precious, but then there's also that feeling of light that's in the room as
Yes.
well. This one to the left is I don't know, they're all my favorites, right?
I know. Oh yes, this was wonderful. I love the mixed media. I love the notions of the complexities of motherhood, of the expectations of women, of all of the historical references, the personal references.
She's used color chips as part of the background, and with names like something or another, mauve. And then here's these women doing their caretaking, and their bodies. The head is not there.
Yes, right.
And the fashion and the home
Yes.
decorating, and kind of about women finding their place as people within all these expectations and cultural I don't know,
Yeah.
decorations.
And the layering there is just beautiful. It's very Rauschenberg like.
Although I don't know, I don't remember Rauschenberg using feminine imagery.
That's what I mean, but like more interesting.
Sure. Absolutely. Oh, and okay, here we have, I think this is, let me make sure, I think I know the artist's name. A samurai.
Tenyo is the artist.
Yes. And the name of it is Dragon, and it's based on a female samurai warrior.
Yes, that was.
You don't hear about it in the music
too.
and in the movies, but that was a thing.
Oh, the eyes in that piece, and the ceramic. So this was this. What was her? It was ceramic. Can you remind me what it's the technique that she used?
I don't think that's what I drilled into on the label. I think I was talking, I think, Amanda, can you see what's on the extended label?
Yeah, it's clay, oil paint, and stain are the medium.
Okay.
And then the label is just talking about the female samurai.
So let's look at the quilt on the next wall, the house. This is by Brittany Denham. The title is House Home Number 2. And she's one of the artists that I had the pleasure of interviewing. She made this piece with her son, her baby, literally strapped onto her back. And I think, as she became a mother, she started thinking about connections between mothers and children over time, and about women's work. And her art practice really changed. She was a printmaker, and it was really difficult to have her infant at the printmaking studio. And she turned to a medium that I'd say women have used traditionally for centuries, millennia, because you can pick up scraps of fabric and create something out of them in the time that your child's napping. And when I interviewed her, it was when her child was napping. But this kind of piecework, I was just saying, Jill, really ties into women's
Yes.
work because it's what you're able to do when your child's napping.
Yes.
It's what you're able to do in bits and pieces when your time isn't really your own.
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I'm experiencing that right now with my own child. So we all experience that, and that break and that honesty, again, that the complexity of women's lives, us as mothers, us as daughters, us as multiple human beings that is often left out in art historical discourse. This was so refreshing as an exhibition because people were being honest about it, about the complexities about being a woman. And I just found, you know, that's just something that we should celebrate. That is something we should celebrate as human beings, as a nation, as in the United States. It's something that we have to kind of compartmentalize, but it is something that I feel like so many of these artists were addressing.
We were talking about materials a little bit, and this is made out of patriotic ribbons. And she also was careful to add what she called pussycat fur. Parts of one of the media. And let's go off to the right a little bit. This piece is really haunting.
Oh, again, yes. Yeah, wow. And seeing that embroidery, that work is incredible. That was haunting. That was a haunting, simply haunting. Her choice of not framing that piece, her choice of keeping it on muslin, and then the choice of having the eye and the beautifully create. That is an exceptional way of rendering that in textile form. I thought that was so compelling.
And you can see the trace of where the embroidery frame was, and then she's chosen to display it as if it's a piece of laundry.
Yes, yes, yes. Again, like a disposable, silenced, discarded women's work, but made into something beautiful and made into something that we witness and that we are experiencing and that we have a connection with, and that we understand that emotion in some way, and that we're not silencing ourselves from those emotions and those truth telling. A lot of truth telling in this exhibition, a lot of truth telling.
Now this piece is just searingly personal, and you know, and again, this artist is working through a history of abuse with her work. So then the next one to the right, this is the one that I was wanting to come to. The title of this is Silence. If we could see the full thing first and then come in. It's so beautifully crafted. And then as you come in and focus on this opening, this rip that's being sewn shut.
Yes. Yes, I thought that this really stood out for me in terms of the medium. I hadn't seen anybody else who had entered anything of this kind, nor have I seen too much of this kind of work in my curatorial practice. I thought that it was original, it was innovative, it was interesting. I loved that she was experimenting with a whole range of different materials. I love the minimalism of this work as well. I thought that it could contribute to the exhibition in that way.
And that one's Betsy Timmer. This quilt, well, when we were hanging it, we had it upside down when we unwrapped it, and it's gorgeous on the backside too.
Wow.
The craft of this one is just exceptional.
That's when you know it's a really good work of art, is when if it's a textile and the back is just as good as the front.
And actually, the metallic bits of this are actually coffee bags. And I drink so much coffee, I just know that. I recognize the pattern of coffee bags. I don't know what that says about me, but.
I felt, look at that. Oh my gosh, the materiality of that. I wasn't able to see that. Oh, it's glistening. I love her references of the quilting patterns, of the circles, of the traditional patterns in quilting. The metallic that I see there, but I also see like a Helen Frankenthaler painting.
It's also very high tech, isn't it? At the
Yes,
same time as
that's
it's
right.
referring. Mhm.
That's right. I remember that. This was a very painterly textile. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, just luscious colors.
And just the more you zoom in, the more we see. It's amazing that both the big picture and the detail of this work.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. And I believe with that one, that was all, it was digitally rendered, but then didn't she hand sew that?
Yes, it is hand sewn and it's all separate pieces. I
Yes.
guess the media just lists fiber and mixed media. The title of it is oxidation. So actually she has intentionally oxidized the fabric also. I think she was thinking about aging and decay and things like that, intentionally distressing the materials.
Yeah. The contrast between the blues and the oranges and the browns, and then the shimmering glory of the metallics within the textile itself.
And the artist is Judith Quinn Garnett.
Beautiful. The scale is incredible on that piece. Oh, this was so incredible. Again, this reminded me, this is one of the things we talked about in our show and Hearts of Our People, of the notion that men created abstraction. And one of the points that we address in the exhibition that my co-curator Terry Greaves talks about a lot is that Native women artists were the first American abstractionists. They were abstracting their world, whether it was on textiles or on parfleche or something like that. And this too reminded me of that, that this is a quilt, right? So it's not seen as it's material. Yeah, it's craft. Its materiality is diminished because it is a textile. So that's diminished, but she is creating abstraction. And talk about color field theory. Talk about color theory that she's working with there. And her lines, it's just unbelievable.
The lines of there's the overall abstraction, kind of hard edge. Well, not hard edge, but it has this format, but then the small lines of the quilting add so much richness and another layer to it. It's wonderful.
Just beautiful.
So that's Lisa Flowers Raw leaf stack number 20.
Oh, yeah, that texture is beautiful. Oh, I love this work.
This area has a lot of I don't know, kind of life and death and resurrection going on. Say,
this artist had several exceptional works of art, and this was, it was hard to choose which one. I felt like the characters that were represented, and the tree of life, the floral motif, the little child.
Now you can see the background too. I don't know how well that came through but there's this gorgeous subtle dark gray on black in the background, these gorgeous flowers underneath the
wow,
the gouache in white. and she talks about being inspired by, like traditional Indian art, the Eastern art, where they're using gouache and they're using miniatures, and in that culture that was considered important, not the giant oil paintings of Western culture. So she's kind of digging back into that idea. And it's just, and it is such a, it's a family scene, and it has that generational connectivity shown. It's very different than the, oh, let's see, the art historical, the Tree of Jesse, right? Where, all mankind springing from his loins. This is kind of a feminist version of that idea.
Yes, it is. And the relationship between the mother and the child, that I love that too. The depictions of young women was throughout the exhibition was also, that was another kind of criteria. One of the things that I was thinking about is how much I wanted to be even, to show abstraction, women's abstractions, the importance of women in abstract work and also in the figurative. And I think that some of the renderings of young women in the figurative were haunting and really important messages in several of the works.
Mm-hmm. We'll have to just take a quick trip to the other gallery, but let's see. Let's go on to Maggie Hiltner's while we're here.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so many really strong Montana artists, and I mean, we tend not to be taken seriously here, I guess, by the art world, and the work that's being done here is just, it's world class.
Really
Maggie Hiltner is doing pretty well. She's showing nationally, but I love the way she balances this just wonderful, happy imagery and with a lot of death.
Yes, life and death, color and dark, light and dark. Oh, beautiful.
Death and resurrection, and even in her materials again, because she's recycling the devalued women's work that she finds in the thrift store and resurrecting it in her own work.
Yes, I love that aspect of her work of resituating what was in the past and putting it into a contemporary work and putting it at a different artistic level, beautiful.
We recently added one of her works to our collection, and it's a double wedding ring quilt with a theme of infidelity. It's
Yeah, that's exceptional.
So let's go to the other gallery. Jill mentioned the work that had been done, depicting some of the younger women, and there's some really wonderful examples of that if we turn right. Yes.
Yes. Oh.
So this was another one of the artists that I had the pleasure to interview, and we'll release a lot of those interviews over time on First Friday. But this artist was talking about how girls learn to be little ladies at a very early age. This is by Stacy Minch, and it's based on her daughter, and her daughter is learning the duty of writing a thank you letter.
Yes. Yes.
And it's just such a beautiful, sensitive portrait, so intimate and beautifully painted.
So beautifully painted. I love the crispness of and the warmth of the figure, and I love the brush strokes and the freedom of the paint. Look at that luscious paint in the background. Oh, that contrast was so wonderful to show kind of the complexities and that gray, the color of that gray as the backdrop for of a young woman learning how to write thank you notes. seem symbolic to me.
Hmm. And we have more on this wall.
Oh,
Again,
yes.
kind of that practice for being a caretaker. You know, there she is. She's cleaning or washing her doll.
Yes. Again, this attention. You know, I just think that, you know, in the eyes of a woman, in the observances of women artists, to be able to capture what is being, all that's being said and unsaid in this painting, I feel like women can capture this in part because of their experience, and to show the complexities of that, to show the doll, this girl's love for the doll, but to see the one girl as somber, you know, it's painful to witness this girl's attention, and the greenish gray quality to her face, almost sickly in a way. Her
Yeah, it's serious business.
mm-hmm. And then the crispness of the, you know, the porcelain doll, the perfect porcelain doll. And then here is this young girl who's grappling with whatever she's grappling with, but
And the contrast between their two hair ribbons is interesting. The doll has this perfect tiny ribbon, and
yes,
and the girl seems to be struggling more with hers, maybe struggling with the kind of roles, the kind of image that she's supposed to be projecting.
right,
The
right.
difference in their dress as well.
Right, exactly, right. Those differences, and also those unconscious kind of messages that young women those practices that young women have, that are formative at that period, particularly at that age, you know, that become lifelong parts of you, and this artist is able to articulate that beautifully, painfully. It's beautiful, it's painful, it's insightful, it's
And there's yet more on this wall. Let's see. Yeah.
oh yes. Yeah, I thought, again, you know, the figurative, I thought it was really important. I think that particularly in contemporary art, you see less emphasis of the figure in a lot of art museums. Again, there's more, the conceptual and abstraction seems to be kind of the zeitgeist. But I think that it was really important to have these figures, these young women, and the expressions. Oh, that's just so beautiful, of conveying that next generation, and also the observance of the artist, of that young girl, and all of her dreams and all of her hopes and all of her life ahead of her.
This work is by Ginger Bowen, and the title is Naivete.
Yes.
And yeah, it's a very transitional kind of work in terms of like where she is in her age and how she's seated.
Yes.
You know, the kind of constrained energy, the kinetic energy of, you know,
Yes.
she's about
Yes.
to do something else.
Yes, she is. And observing intently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't realize we did kind of put all of the younger women here together. Wow, this ceramic piece. Okay, so there was another one that was a little bit daunting to hang. This.
Yes, that would be hard to hang. That would be terrifying to hang. Again, you know, as a juror, I thought it was really important to include the sculptural, the ceramic, the figure. Oh, look at that hand.
And that's exactly why you were my first choice as a juror for this exhibition, is because I just knew that you'd have sensitivity to this broad range of media and modes of expression. And I'm so thrilled with how this exhibition has turned out.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful to see.
So there's subtle gold leaf cracks in this work. That the artist, Amanda, can you just say a little bit, read the label about what the artist was thinking with the gold leaf?
The gold leaf accentuates cracks throughout the seemingly timeless bust to symbolize the misuse of the female form throughout history.
It's really subtle, but it changes it completely. And this gesture.
Yes, the gesture without the arm.
Our finance guy said it looks like someone at Friday at 3 o'clock, which I feel.
Yes.
Or hanging that work of art.
Yeah, that is also how I felt hanging it. Yeah.
And then the next one to the left here, yeah, this work, I mean, it is a gorgeous painting. And you might wonder why is this in a show of women's work? But again, Amanda, do you want to read just a little bit from the label on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Fine dining is inspired by a visit to the club in Montreal that used to be Mount Stephen Men's Club. Women weren't allowed in the building until 1964, and then only on Thursdays. I was struck by the pink and decidedly feminine reflected light by the chair at the head of the table. I was born in 1961, and I've grown up chased by the obstacles and unwelcome rules women have been subjected to over the years.
And the artist also mentioned that I think she left a napkin, a dirty napkin on the table intentionally as her personal humph to the whole situation. It's really a lovely painting.
It's a beautiful painting. The colors are exceptional. The absence of people is striking. The given especially what she talked about in terms of that old boys club and the exclusion of women in that sphere, although all of the activities that would happen, which would be probably the cooking and the cleaning, would be the work of women.
Ooh, we'll come along that pretty soon on this wall, or next wall anyways. And here's just a wonderful photograph of a young working woman.
Yes. Yeah.
There was another, a kind of a similar photograph that was juried into the show, but unfortunately, we lost one work because of COVID. The artists just weren't able to participate, but we're including them in the online information, and hope that they'll be back with us.
The ethereal quality of the girl and the intimate nature and the care that she's giving that calf. The lighting was beautiful. The artist really captured that ethereal, the lightness of her hair, extraordinary.
It kind of brackets the painting of the little girl with the doll in a way. It's a very similar kind of caregiving that's going on, but
Yes.
It's much brighter.
It is, exactly. It's a big contrast. It's absolutely a contrast. This is ethereal, where the other one seemed almost doomed, right? She seemed so torn. She was psychologically torn. I think, and the psychological too in this exhibition is, again, the emotive, the psychological, the truth telling, is just everywhere.
Well, let's keep going. But actually, I love these two prints.
Yes, and the way they speak to each other is really cool.
So the one on the right, I just have to point this out. I mean, first of all, the scene is amazing. It's a dancer. It's connecting to powwow. But then technically, this is a mezzo tent. The artist used a rocker over the entire plate to turn the entire plate a rich black with little tiny burrs that hold the ink. And then went back in with a burnisher to create the grays and the whites. And I mean, just as a technical feat, it is an amazing work of art.
Can you tell Susan is a printmaker?
Normally mezzotints are tiny because they are so time consuming, but you know, there's just no other way in printmaking anyways that you can get that kind of rich, beautiful black and then the satiny whites and grays. So there it is. And the next one is also an exceptional print. This is a reductive wood cut. So the artist started with a big piece of wood and carved away the white, and then printed the first, probably lightest color, one of those lavenders, and then carved away the parts that needed to stay in that color, and so on. And so the plate is being continually destroyed as the work is made. She only made, I think it's an edition of 5. But this one speaks so strongly to the idea of women's work. It's called Working Hard or Hardly Working. And it came from her experience of being a low-wage laborer, like the woman who's shown with the mop bucket there in this liminal space, with these young men with their cell phones who are maybe working also in a different way, in a way that maybe is more valued. But again, just beautiful work as a print, as well as all of the different meanings that are embedded in it. Jill, are you okay on time?
I actually do. I'm sorry. I do. I am a mother and I have
I
a
know.
daughter.
I get it. Yeah. So
A ride.
should we let you go now?
I think so. I'm sorry that I have to go.
No, don't be sorry. I thought we'd only talk for like 15 minutes, then we had technical difficulties, and it has been so great talking with you. And
It was so
I
wonderful.
look forward to doing it again. I
Yes.
hope that COVID allows us to get together in person in September, but if not, we'll have our technical things all together and we'll figure it out.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. It's a beautiful show. It's just, it warms my heart, and just, I hope that so many people can see this exceptional work of women. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for jurying this. And we will do a 360 filming of the exhibition. So
Wonderful.
It'll be possible to, you know, kind of for people to tour on their own, for you to see in more detail. And we look forward to talking with you again as the exhibition progresses. Thank you.
Sounds great. Okay. Thank you so much.